I like the fact that you brought in an aspect, and I started discussing this with Barrister Team last week. We could not even finish it. Fortunately, we have the time now, thanks to ABC Amba Television, to really decode it. I like the fact that you brought the aspect of France trying to change global dynamics and their foreign policy as to who they are partnering with. There's a lot happening. Even as we speak, there is a conspiracy, I would say international conspiracy between some certain states in Africa. You would have South Africa, you have Malaysia, China, and Russia to undermine the US dollars. Now France is going to China for economic and political partnership, and his objective is purportedly to institute a special sovereignty of European states without America. So a lot is happening. The current world order might be changing, or an imminent third world war might have new allies emanating. If we've gone down history, you realize that the allies we had during the Second World War were not exactly same allies during the First World War when Germany was leading the entire world. This is very critical, and I think it has to affect our movement as a people, owing to the fact that France is directly involved in the war in Cameroon. Maybe France is thinking that America is taking our sides, as confirmed by you, and they would want to make new friends. But as a team, what are the technicalities involved? How can these changes affect us during this time that we're also trying to make new friends?
Well, I think we should all agree that right now that we speak, 2023, France is absolutely diplomatically desperate. They have no new way out. They hang around everything. And as usual, like most human beings, they look for excuses. They blame people who are not supposed to be blamed. Ambazonians are only victims. We are not the cause of any of their problems. We're just part of the victims. And the French larger problem in Africa is self-destruction. They made it themselves by pretending to give independence when they gave no independence. They have been harvesting all the minerals from Mali. They have been doing same to Central African Republic and all their other colonies, which were part of France d'outre-mer, France overseas. And so we have not been part of France. And if there's anything, France hates us. I mean, when I say us, I mean Ambazonians. Because we open the eyes of people who would otherwise be dormant. Why do you believe, for example, I saw it on the program, why is Chad now taking on Yaoundé publicly, not even privately? Why are they taking on Yaoundé? When they take on Yaoundé, they're taking on France. People did not know. When they saw that French, that Chadian foreign minister, whoever, making the speech, it proceeded from somewhere. The week before, Chad, as a government, had nationalized all the holdings of Chad pipeline from Kribi to Chad. They nationalized it, thrown out all those foreigners, including even in Cameroon. And Cameroon thought that in order to circumvent it, they will create this the so-called Savannah whatever thing, a private company, and give it to Frank Biya. And of course, you see the Chadians coming out popularly to say, no, we in Chad will protect national interests. You in Cameroon, you protect private interests. Is that helpful to them? No. Is that helpful to the Ambazonians? Of course, it is. We're helping them. We're helping other African countries, colonies, call them in quote, to understand their rights. France will never forgive us. As Mr. Avigana says, the French cannot dictate to the Americans. The Americans may sometimes take what France has to say, just to save their own interest. But they cannot, in terms of foreign policy, in terms of defense, dictate to the Americans what their interest is. And so it's a foregone conclusion. We are on the right track. Luckily, we are lost here in the United States. We are not just sitting here in the United States. You and me and many others we are American citizens. who influence the American political system better than a Cameroonian influences his own political system back home. So that is it. That's it. Thank you.
this is
Uh,
this are amazing. Barrister Fu, please, you want to react?
yes,
You want to, do you
Badi,
want Barrister Fu should react, and then we'll come back to you, Barrister Ghana, please.
there are many things that the French have done to raise the eyebrows of America. The first is that France, they violated the sanctions that were put on Russia by importing refined uranium directly from Russia to use it in their nuclear plants in France. They are doing that right now. Secondly, they went to China and told the Chinese that the Europeans will have nothing to do with the position of the United States as far as Taiwan is concerned. That is a direct affront to the United States. And France has already lost Central African Republic to the Russians. They have already lost Mali to the Russians. They have already lost Burkina Faso to the Russians. The Americans will not tolerate the Russian influence in Africa. They are now working to limit the extent of which the Russians can go anywhere in the African continent, and that starts with Cameroun and Ambazonia. Cameroon now is dealing with the Russians indirectly. If you take the Martinez Zogo affair, which unearthed a lot of problems, you will find out that the Wagner group that is in Central Africa has been secretly entering Cameroon and carrying out reconnaissance. The man who is sitting now in Kondenge called Amugu Belenga runs a militia commanded by a retired colonel of the presidential guard called Colonel Nsua, who is a father-in-law to Amugu Belenga. And Amugu Belenga is a bedfellow to the president of Central African Republic, and consequently has been helping the president of the Central African Republic financially to take care of the Wagner group, which is now stationed in Central Africa, and they are calling the shots. The French have been kicked out, everybody has been kicked out, the Russians are there. The Russians will tell you that it's a private militia. No. It represents the Russians anywhere, including Ukraine, where they are fighting. So the Americans now should begin to know that the French can no longer handle what is happening in Francophone Africa. Therefore, they should step in to ensure that even if the French fail anywhere in Francophone Africa, the alternative is not the Russians taking over. That's why Americans are now, I suspect that they are now working on that issue because they have been respecting the French, what they call the Pré-Carré Français in Africa. I think that position is shifting, and it's shifting very fast because of the presence of the Russians on the continent. So Ambazonia is the only country that can protect the Gulf of Guinea from any invasion of the Russians if the Americans will give their backing and help. Because the Gulf of Guinea is so important. It's the second largest oil deposits in the world. The Middle East is the first. Americans will not tolerate Russian presence in the Gulf of Guinea, even though the Russians are already exploiting oil in the Gulf of Guinea, given by La République du Cameroun. You can argue that it's a private Russian company, but the Russians are exploiting oil in the Gulf of Guinea. But it is not yet it is not yet considered the presence of the Russians in the Gulf of Guinea. Therefore, Americans have an interest to protect the Gulf of Guinea from the invasion of the Russians. And that is why, like my colleague Barrister Ghana said, Ambazonia is already free. We're now in what they call mopping up, but we must do that with a lot of firepower, so that La Republic should know that even though they are surrendering, they are already surrendering. Before Barrister Ghana came, we talked about what their generals who are managing the war have told the political people in Yaoundé, that the soldiers cannot win that war. And this is something that had been told them by the Americans long ago. So I agree with Barrister Ghana that this matter is over. We need to just continue with the mopping up and ensure that we get back to our